Now, I decided to go with calling you Gibson, even though you said that's what your mom calls you.
Yeah,
I'm
people
sorry.
call me Gibson when I'm in trouble.
So it'll be Gib from
Gib
now
is good.
on. Okay.
Gib is good. How many of you are Netflix members? All right, and how many of you are paying? Oh, good. All the hands go down in Buenos Aires. All right, I want you to think for a moment. Think about how likely you would be to recommend Chegg. Netflix. But you should buy Chegg stock. Netflix, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is awesome and 0 sucks. So pick your number. How many of you would give it a 9 or a 10? How many would give it a 7 or an 8? And how many would give it a 0 or 6? 0 to 6. Thank you. All right, so this is pretty typical Net Promoter Score for Netflix, and I love you. What could be better about the service for you?
I want to replace my entire watching experience and have to pay for my cable. So I need more options.
He wants more options. He wants more stuff. He wants original content. He wants an easier way to keep his list of movies separate from his wife, right? And this is what I love about all of you, which is no matter what you do, there are lots of ways that you just have to keep getting better. It's just unending, this idea of delighting customers, and eventually drives you to invent on all of your behalf. Now, I got interested in this idea of customer obsession because I join startups with a proof of concept and I help them to scale, and there's all sorts of challenges. But one of them is, how do you keep everybody pointing in the right direction? And just this simple notion of customer obsession, of everybody obsessing, as I do, over what could make the product or service better, kept everybody nominally charging in the right direction. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career. I joined Electronic Arts in 1991, building bang bang shoot 'em up games. These are all the letters that I read from capital G gamers, and they were not helpful to me, okay? And I was trained in customer focus. I put a photo of my competitor on my desk to remind me I was competing with him, right? And then I went on to build kids software. This is Elmo's preschool. Good luck. Oprah Winfrey threw Tickle Me Elmo into the crowd one winter, and the software did very well that year. But I got very focused on how do you satisfy 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds, and more importantly, their parents who pay. And I'm really excited about the next step. Grew up with Madeline, a little French girl. This is a startup called Creative Wonders, which we sold to this dude. This is Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. He was the CEO. The company was called The Learning Company. And we sold Creative Wonders to The Learning Company. Now I'm going to tell you how Kevin made his money. We sold that company to Mattel for $3.5 billion. And he moved on, I moved on, and 2 years later, they threw the software out of Mattel, and it was now worth 1/10, $350 million. And it's like, I worked all of that time and years and hadn't really created enduring value. What the heck happened? And I met Reed Hastings. In Canada, you know about DVDs, okay? So Netflix was a DVD by mail. That's how we got big, and then they went to streaming. Reed had 2 questions in the interview. I got the job. That's a little newsflash. Question 1 was, Gib, can you delight customers? And luckily, his kids had used Sesame Street, Elmo's preschool, and they liked it, okay? And then the second question was, can you do consumer science? And luckily, I had asked him earlier, hey, Reed, when you grow up, what do you want your legacy to be? And his answer was consumer science. That unlike someone like Steve Jobs, who can predict the future and understands taste and fashion, I'm just a freaking geeky engineer, and we're going to create a system where we can test anything to figure out what works or doesn't. And that was the system of consumer science. So I'm going to take you on 2 journeys today. One is Netflix. This is a very sucky Netflix in 1999. Okay, it costs $5 to get a disc. It magically shows up about 7 days later. Woo! All startups stink at the beginning. Okay. A little product leader trick, always show what the product looked like before you showed up, okay? And this is what it looked like last night. Just simple, personalized. It does look better, right? So the other part of the journey was from this wonderful world of customer focus. I had been trained about satisfying customers, of listening to them, and of competing. And this was all good. But the better world that I discovered was about customer obsession, about delighting customers in this experimental method where you create this hard-to-copy advantage, where you invent the future, and you find very few competitors because they can't do what you do. So I want to talk about that today. There's really 3 chapters to this story. So the first is the DHM model. The second, I'm going to talk about consumer science in just one area of the company, which is how personalization evolved. And then the third, Netflix has a problem today, modern day case. You join, start your free trial, you give up the credit card. And at the end of the month, Netflix hits your credit card. You go from free to paid. There's no email saying we're about to switch over. There's no text saying your free trial is about to end. And the question is, should Netflix send you a reminder at the end of your 30-day free trial letting you know that it's switching to paid? So these are my 3 chapters, if you will. So brief history. A company was born in 1997. Mark Randolph, the co-founder, bought an audio CD in a store, and he mailed it to himself, and it wasn't broken, and it played. Cool. At the same time, the DVD player was born. In 2000, the concept of unlimited DVD by mail rental happened. And then in 2007, we launched Watch Instantly. That's what it was called, because you couldn't use the word streaming, because customers thought that meant streamlining. Okay? So the word didn't exist as yet. And we had about 300 really stinky titles at launch. Yay! Big deal. First original content in 2013. How many have watched House of Cards? Cool. A lot more countries. And today, there's 130 million paying members. You can double that for the household and maybe even triple it for other folks that are on their program. And the company's worth about 150 billion, a lot more than the 350 million that the learning company dropped to. So the DMH model, my job is quite simple. The job is to delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. And that's just a fancy way of saying make money. And I want to talk, and the reason I want to make money is to invest in building a better product in the future. It was that Disney quote today was interesting. Why do you want to make money? So I can make more movies. Very similar idea here. All right, so the balancing act. I know how to move each of you 1 point higher on the NPS, give you everything you get today, and charge half the price, okay? So delighting folks, it's easy. The tricky part is how do you do it in ways that helps build a business. So I want to share with you one of the first A/B tests at Netflix. Back in the old days, all of our customers, via customer support, via focus groups, via any sort of data, they all wanted the same thing. They wanted faster access to new release DVDs. So back then, film would come out in a studio, and then 2 months later, it'd be available on DVD. Everybody wanted it the next day in the mail. And we couldn't afford to get all the inventory to enable that, because 6 and 8 weeks later, the demand would drop off. But that's what everybody said they wanted. So we structured an A/B test. So 1 million members, test cell with 10,000 folks, and those 10,000 folks are in the perfect experience. They put a new release at the top of their queue, because that's how Americans pronounce that word, and the next day the new release shows up in the mail. So we tested it. How many believe that this will change customer behavior? Will people notice this? I'm getting head nods, but no arms. How many of you have arms? All right. So let me tell you about how we measure delight. Delight is measured by retention. So when Netflix was really stinky in 1999, 10% of the members would cancel every month. Today, that's 2% cancel each month. And 1 point cancel because there's no money in their account. And the other one is because it's summer and maybe they shouldn't be binge watching. okay? So a lot better over the years. And I'm going to just share with you the churn rate, the opposite of delight. So in this test, what happened was the people in the newly perfect cell, their retention improved by just a little bit. And we were surprised by how little it changed. So now I'm going to work you through some math. If we rolled this out to all, we would have saved 5,000 customers. And for us, that was worth $1 million. So the way that we arrived at that was we said 5,000 customers times $100, which is the lifetime value, and we doubled it. Because a person would rave about the service and they would tell a friend, and that friend would come into the service for free. That was the thinking. So we essentially instrumented doubling down on delight in the early going. So if you do the math, a little tricky thing happens. It costs us $5 million to create that delight. So 1 million in gain, 5 million in loss. So what do, right? So we were a punk startup. We didn't have a lot of cash, and we did not launch this. There was not enough delight to cover the costs. Now, does anybody want to make an argument for why a company should have done this? Yeah. Oh, that's a good. The answer was they want to get bought by someone else. So make the short term look good. Maybe the margin wouldn't be there in the long term. Maybe. Well, like we were never wanting to sell the company. You know, we're trying to build a great 100-year company. There's one number that you could quibble with in the calculation, the number 2. So Amazon often will use an 8x word of mouth factor. A great service will cause 8 folks to come in. Compelling argument, we couldn't do it. All right, the notion of hard to copy. Imagine your HB Mock. He's the product manager. This is the new member page. He's so excited because this was the result of a very successful test where if you put a happy family on a couch, you convert better. Cool. And I'm like, HB, that's great, fantastic, good for business. However, it's not hard to copy. And I'm going to bet you $100 that within a month, our dear friends at Blockbuster are going to have a frickin' happy family on the couch, which is exactly what happened. Okay? So this illustrates the value in doing things that are also hard to copy. And think for a moment about all the reasons that if you were a punk startup, you would choose not to compete with Netflix today. What are all the things that are really hard to copy about what Netflix does? What? The variety of content, all that original content. What else? The costs, the huge economy of scale. What else? The what? Oh, a lot of unique technology. How did they do that? What else? What? I couldn't quite hear it, sorry. Oh, yeah, fantastic. There's a wonderfully unique technology around personalization and the algorithm there. I can't spell that word. It's funny, I love it. I can tell I'm in a room full of product people because you've missed one key hard to copy thing. The brand! That's what you were going to say, right? So here are a number of things that are wicked hard to copy. I'm from Boston as a kid, sorry. The one little fun one I put on this list is this idea of counter-positioning. This doesn't happen very often. But it's when you do something that the competitor can't do it because it would crush their business. So remember this little experiment with HB Mock? We put a little phrase, which was no late fees. Half of Blockbuster's business and their margin revolves around late fees, those bastards, okay? And they couldn't make the same offer. So this is one of those hard to copy advantages called counter positioning. But you get the notion of hard to copy. So now you think for a moment about all the things that delight customers, all the things that are hard to copy, all the things that deliver business, and you think about the intersection. So in 2005, these were all the high-level theories and hypotheses about what would do those 3 things. And I want you to think for a moment, Netflix, it turned out pretty well. What percentage of time did they get it right? That's the question. And I'm going to answer the question. About half, right? So lots of failed theories and hypotheses in this experimentation. And I want to bring your attention to a couple Imagine it's 2005 and you're in Silicon Valley. Every frickin' VC is asking, what's your social strategy? Because of Facebook. And we experimented with it. And it works very well in music, and it doesn't work very well in movies because your friends have really lousy movie tastes. Okay? The other thing is you're not really willing to let your friends know what you're really watching. Okay? Failed experiment. So a couple of interesting things. Exclusive failed in 2007, but by 2013, with this huge economy of scale, originals work. In the early days, we opened up the APIs to let 1,000 flowers bloom. No flowers bloomed, but those APIs created the ecosystem where every device that exists today lets you stream instantly to your television. And that's a huge, hard-to-copy network effect, which is amazing. All right, so the secret to success of Netflix, one of them is essentially high-cadence failure. Okay? How do you learn quickly and just accept that you're going to be right about half the time? I want to give you a little context how we thought about the growth of the company. The first step was to get big on DVD. And then we were going to lead, now we call it streaming. Back then we put the word downloading. Then we were going to expand worldwide. And once we were all digital, then finally we could get to the original content. So this was like the playbook over 4 chapters, 5 years each, over 20 years. It takes a long time to build a great company. And the other thing going on was we were trying to build this big virtuous cycle. The more customers that we had, the more we could talk these device manufacturers into letting you watch on your TV, which is where you want. The more of that, the more content we could afford. Today, this cycle is very simple. The more content, the more members. The more members, the more content. And it's getting bigger and badder, and it's super hard to copy. All right, so if I want to look smart, this is what I would say the product strategy was. So I've gotten rid of all the failure. And then the key thing for me is having proxy metrics that help measure whether, in fact, these strategies are working. Retention's really hard to move, so we had proxy metrics for each to have a sense of whether we were pushing these different ideas in the right direction. I'll get into a few of them later. And at any moment in time, we had key projects or tactics against those key strategies on the left. Chapter 2. Welcome to my family. I want to talk about consumer science, this process of invention, in just the context of personalization. And you guys know how it worked out, but you're going to be surprised that a lot of your intuition about what will work and what won't, I'm going to do a series of pop quizzes, and you'll be surprised. We were just as surprised. Reads consumer science, just a fancy word of saying experimental method. Form a hypothesis, test it, usually via A/B testing, observe the data, and then I just appreciate that human judgment is still required when you look at these A/B test results. So I'm hoping to be important for another couple of years. The consumer insight, at the beginning, we could guess right about half the time about what would work and not. And, over 5 years, I could guess maybe right 70% of the time. And these were the sources of consumer insight. When I first showed up at Netflix, there were 50 different metrics that described customer behavior and the business dynamics, these E-staff metrics. Spend 2 hours every Monday. Focus groups. We learned to get outside of Silicon Valley. I'm a Silicon Valley freak. I am not a normal person. And learn to go to Minnesota or wherever normal people live. I did some surveys already, and I'm going to share some A/B tests. Where are they from? Toronto. Honestly, anytime I speak, I know I'm not talking to normal people. Okay? This is what Netflix looked like in 2005. It was not personalized. Actually, there was one thing up here, a tab called recommendations. And I'm going to give you a news flash. In the world of personalization, that's a bad word. So think about how humans talk to each other. You don't recommend that someone go out to coffee on a Friday night. You don't recommend they go on a date or whatever the cool word to use is today. You might suggest or, hey, I thought you might like, okay? But this is what it looked like. And we formed a strategy. We said we're going to get the explicit data. We're going to try to understand by a variety of means what you say about a movie. Turned out to be stars. Implicit data, we know what you're watching, what you're streaming, what you quit. And then get to know a lot about you and a lot about the movies, and then magically connect the two via these algorithms. And there was a fourth theory, that over time, if we were great at helping connect you with great movies, the average rating of the movies that you watch would go up, and retention would improve. Sounds like a cool theory. And here were all the projects against all the strategies. And here were the ways that we measured the proxy metrics to see if we were making progress on each of those ideas. And so for my first pop quiz, I'm going to pound on just the first metric. This was our proxy metric for personalization. The question is, what percent of customers would provide us with at least 50 ratings in their first 6 weeks of the service? Oh, I've already got some curmudgeons over here that are guessing 1%. Do I have a youthful optimist in the room? It's a number between 0 and 100. Okay, let's do it this way. Think of your number, and then how many are 0 to 5? How many are 5 to 10? How many are 10 to 20? How many are 20 to 30? 30 and up. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you probably want to know what the answer is. Well, come back tomorrow. Okay, so I want you to notice the tab, Movies You'll Heart, okay? And that little heart, my design team, they use a very technical design term, which was fugly, which I think is funky plus ugly. I mean, the designers can help me. But look at that little idea, Movies You'll Heart. This is a little bit better than recommendations. And so the answer is, over the years, we got it up close to 30%, right? And I will show you the invention, which is when you clicked on that Movies You'll Heart tab, you were brought to the ratings wizard. And a very simple statement. The more you rate, the better we'll help you to find movies you'll love. And people went crazy here, right? They were rating, and our job was to put more movies in front of them. And this is how we got tons of explicit taste data to help fuel this personalization system. This is my family. That's Kristen, she's 55. That's Kelsey, she's 22. Brittany, with eyes closed, is 20. I'm 56. And here's the question. Will it help Netflix to predict your movie taste if it knows your age and gender? Now, this is a yes-no question. So think about it for a moment. And how many believe it will help Netflix to make better movie choices if it knows your age and gender? And how many believe the opposite is true? In this case, the opposite is true. Okay? That people's movie tastes are wonderfully unique, and it's better just to know a couple of movies that they like to inform the guess of a third or a fourth or a fifth. Well, how did we know this? The metric was called RMSE, which is root mean squared error. You like Star Wars and Star Trek. We predicted you'd like each 4 stars. You rated each 4 stars. We were perfect. So this is one of those metrics down and to the right is best. It was just our ability to predict. And we informed the algorithm with age and gender, and it did not improve RMSE at all. Big surprise to us. The big dog in the early days was essentially collaborative filtering. You like Star Trek and Star Wars. You like Star Trek and Star Wars. Nod yes. What's a third title you like? Any title. What?
Horror.
Horror?
Top Gun.
Top Gun. Because of that, you'll like Top Gun too.
Yeah.
And no, you don't have to nod yes. But this is how collaborative filtering works, writ large. All right? And by the way, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes the algorithm will say you like Star Trek and Star Wars, and because of that, you'll like Sesame Street. The math doesn't know, right? And this was the big dog. It was called the Quackle, the Q-ad confirmation layer. You would add a title to your queue, and it would suggest other movies you might like. About 20% of the Q-ads came from here because of collaborative filtering. So there's some good stuff. Problem was we only had one engineer. His name was Stan Lanning. We needed more. So we crowdsourced it. The Netflix prize said, we'll give anyone in the community $1 million if you can improve RMSE by at least 10%. Each year, we gave a $50,000 progress prize to whichever team was at the top of the list. And there's some insights you can gain right away just looking at the team names, okay? Because they are funky. Team number 4 is called Opera Solutions and Vandelay United. Okay, now, can you imagine a team calling themselves that? And I know there's a Seinfeld reference hiding in there, right? But what was going on was teams 2 and 3, just before the Progress Prize was awarded, they combined all their algorithms together and they would bump to number 1. So there were lots of algorithms being combined together. I'm never going to be able to say that word again. More algorithms. What we learned is more algorithms are better, combining lots of them. And in fact, after a couple of years, we paid the $1 million. Will the new algorithm improve retention? How many youthful enthusiasts in the room? And how many curmudgeonly? Yeah, a lot of you are losing your arms. I can see it. It did not improve retention. Kind of a bummer. And let me tell you the great news about this. Before the Netflix prize, it was not cool if you were an engineer to work at Netflix. And after the Netflix prize, it was way cool. So this was one of the best recruiting tactics ever in the history of engineering. Remember, more algorithm is better. Our friends at Pandora, the music company, they had this thing called the Music Genome Project. So they had 50 musicologists who would tag movies on a variety of attributes. So Jack Johnson, folksy, acoustic, mellow, low tempo, surfer content for 56-year-olds. But they would tag it. And so we tried a similar experience. We hired 50 movicologists, a really good job. And you would watch a lot of movies and you would tag the attributes of these different movies. And it worked. This was called the category interest algorithm. And for the first time, we were able to provide context about why you might like a movie. So Gib, because you like Airplane, we think you'll enjoy Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is part of a category of comedies from the 1980s. So that was meaningful context. And this helped improve retention. It was really quite remarkable. All right, lots of metrics. Crystal Chinkuti's job was to make it really easy for folks to add DVDs to their queue. And her metric was going up and to the right, the percentage of members who had at least 6 DVDs to their queue. And then it started dropping in 2009. Why? Yeah, because Brent Avery's job was to focus on the percentage of members who watched at least 15 minutes of streaming in a month, the smallest increment of value, the shortest TV episode. And this is an exciting moment where now the company is a streaming company, and now unburdened by building DVD by mail systems and working with the US Postal Service or other countries, it could go international. Very, very exciting. And so I have another question for you. Is it helpful to know your French and you live in France? How many yeses? And how many no's? Of course it's not helpful. Movie tastes are wonderfully unique. Okay? Yes, it helps the first few choices, but then after that, you have much better data to know 5 or 10 films that they watch. Astounding to us. All right, something else happened as we expanded worldwide. We had collected billions and billions of ratings. We had created the 5-star rating system. And this company called Facebook, damn them, was out there with a different system. Thumbs up and thumbs down, okay? So you could use a star system. Is it 3? Is it a 4? I have no idea. Maybe it's a 2. Or you could do thumbs up or thumbs down. A/B tested it, and Netflix got twice as much taste data using this simple gesture that everybody in the world understood. What about the poor stars? Well, remember the fourth theory? The fourth theory was over time, the average movie rating would improve, helped you find better movies. And the average ratings went up, but there was no data to support the idea that retention improved because of this. There was none, which was a real head-scratcher that forced us to go talk to people, okay? Talk to folks about what the heck is going on, survey, all sorts of data sources. So if you ask somebody a great movie, they might say Hotel Rwanda. You know, it kind of makes me look smart, right? Or some documentary, whatever. 5-star title. And what we learned was that movie rating does not equal movie enjoyment, okay? And the real secret is that folks love watching Paul Blart's Mall Cop. It's funny, you guys are keeping usually a lot of people have watched this. Okay, thank you for admitting it. And so what we learned was this idea of getting higher and higher rating wasn't important. It was all about the movie enjoyment. In fact, Paul Blart was so good that they did a Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. And then, this is a clue, one of the first original content deals with Netflix was with Adam Sandler, who was the quintessential leave your brains at the door comedy dude. Okay? He did a movie called, this is on Netflix, you can only watch it on Netflix, called The Ridiculous Six. The review said, for those that felt that 100 Ways to Die in the West was too intellectually demanding, you'll love The Ridiculous Six. All right, so there, Netflix, no stars. Casino is a 98% match for me. Netflix believes that I will enjoy it. No reference to what the quality is. Just be enjoyed. And so what Netflix is about today, there's tons of original content. It's wonderfully simple and easy. It's instant everywhere on all platforms, and it's highly personalized. So you can see for me, there's a whole row of binge-worthy TV dramas or movies based on real life, or because I liked Orange is the New Black. Okay? Wonderfully personalized for every member of my family. So what I love about personalization in the long run is this is the quintessential, it's delighting you in these hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. So think about it in the old days, 100,000 DVDs to choose from, it makes it easier to find. And then today, really all that Netflix is doing is right-sizing the investment in original content against its best guess of how many of you will watch it. So how many have watched Stranger Things? Okay, so it can afford to spend $500 million because 100 million people are watching it. Stay with me now. How many of you watched BoJack Horseman? Yes, okay? And because 10 million of us watch that, or 2 million, they can afford to spend 10 million. So all this data is helping inform these investment decisions. They won 23 Emmys a couple weeks ago. It's all niches or niches, whichever is correct. And it's because they can go to taste data of these little pockets of us. It's really quite astounding what personalization has done for the business. Okay, you ready to help poor Netflix? This is the new member page. You show up here. I found the non-member in the room. Where are you? FinTech dude? No, you're not a member. There's one other. The quintessential fence sitters. They are out there. Okay? And so this job, click on the red button, hand over a credit card. Now you're engaged in a free trial. Customer service team said, hey, we're getting a lot of phone calls on day 31, 32, 33. And people are calling in saying, hey, I meant to cancel, I forgot. Or it's summer and it's binge watching, or yeah, all I do is free trials, whatever they said, okay? But there were $10 million worth of these phone calls, and they said, hey, why don't you test reminding folks? So I want to give you a couple of pieces of existing data. Does anybody want to guess what percent that click on the red button, hand over credit card to start a free trial? Actually, you would know. What number is it? It's the same number. Yeah, it's 2%, okay? 2%. People don't realize at that moment in time that they'll have to hand over their credit card. And there's something called, honey, it's time for dinner, right? Like they get busy, or it's kind of wonky to sign up on your iPhone. And it's actually been 2% for like the last 20 years. It's crazy. And then the next question is, what percentage of folks that engage in the free trial convert into paid members at the end of that free trial? And I'll give you a hint. The first number is surprisingly low. The second number is surprisingly high. Okay, I got an 80. Okay, it's actually 90%. Okay, it's a great way to enjoy the service and see if it's right for you. All right, so you A/B test it. That's exciting. How many believe that this will change customers' behavior? This text, this email, the personalized homepage will cause some set of folks to cancel as soon as they get the notice, a little bit more than the normal experience. Will it change customer behavior? It does. I mean, by the way, A/B testing, half the time, no changes, right? But this changes customer behavior. So the next question is, what is month one retention going to drop to? It's going to drop from 90 to some other number. Does anybody have an intuition or a guess? 65. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to do the whole auction thing. The answer is 85%. And let me just do the math for you, okay? The margin story. If you do this in the course of a year, Netflix will lose $80 million. And you can back out the 10 that you're not spending on the phone calls. So if you do this, you're going to lose 70 million bucks. That's the margin story. I'm going to bring you back to the model of delighting customers in these hard-to-copy, margin-losing ways, okay? So is there the potential for delight in this? Yes. How would you articulate that delight? You don't feel ripped off. Courtesy, convenient. Trust. This word trust. And what is that word trust all about? The brand. And is brand a hard-to-copy thing? Yes, sirree, bub. All right. So we're going to delight. Now, you could think about this like, how would I think about Netflix if I knew that they chose to do this? Like, that's kind of impressive. It's so much better than what that damn AOL did 20 years ago. Like, you'd be on the phone for like 4 hours trying to cancel, right? Okay, so high potential for delight. This is building a better brand, and we're going to lose 70 million bucks. So now you're the product manager. Your name is Tom Willerer for this page. The CFO is over on the side glaring at you. How many of you would launch this to all? How many would not? I saw a lot of lost arms again. Woo, woo. Well, who makes this decision? The CFO does not make this decision. Who makes this decision? Not the CEO does not make this decision. Who makes this decision? Tom Willerer, the product manager. There's a fiery debate, okay? Back and forth, smoking something, whatever they say to each other. And Tom decides to do it. Now, let me ask you another question. Is this a high stakes or a low stakes decision? Okay, you're all saying high stakes because you're thinking it's frickin' $70 million. And that is mice nuts, okay? Because the company is $8 billion, okay? There's another reason that this is a low stakes decision. Tom hits the button, this gets executed, and at any moment in time, you can just undo it. This is a low-stakes decision, right? Get 70% of the data, make a decision, go, everybody in the company aligns against him, and they do it. Way cool. So what do you learn from this? This is one of those cases where delight trumps margin. It's okay to lose the 70 million bucks in support of those other things. There is a cost of doing the right thing and building a great brand. It is $70 million in this case. And you cannot measure everything. Oftentimes, this conversation and debate goes on for way too long, which is, well, those people that cancel, do they come back? Did they really tell a friend about the service? Like, you can't know everything. So you get the 70% of data and you go. And this is very much a part of the Netflix culture, this fearsome debate. Good fights make good marriages. I'm still married after 27 years. People make a decision, and they magically line up about the people that they thought were idiots prior to the decision. All right, so there's 3 more things that are required. Courage. Netflix spent 30 minutes debating the $100 million investment in House of Cards, and 30 million canceling season 6 because Kevin Spacey was engaged in sexual harassment of a teenage boy. Okay? Those are courageous decisions. Patience. It takes 20 years to build a great company. Look at this. Kelsey's not going to college. She's certainly not going to medical school, and then it kind of works out in the end. And look at this trauma. $40 billion company that drops to $10 billion in a month. Anybody know what happened there? It's a big, bad disaster. Netflix separated in the States its DVD by mail service from its streaming service, and you were expected to go over here for your DVDs and over here for streaming. And they named the new company Quickster. Which he did not think was a good name. So the third thing, Reed Hastings will talk about, hey, this is on me. I failed to obsess over the customers. We made a lot of great decisions, and I lost my humility and forgot to really think about who comes number one, which is the customer. All right, so when I'm working with different companies, if I'm trying to understand if they are obsessed, I look for 5 things. The first is strong data, folks. Like, I look for the sets of metrics that describe both the business and the customer behavior. And then I also look for the voice of customer, the qualitative, the focus group, the getting outside of your freakish city to talk to normal people. Survey data. I did an NPS at the beginning, and newsflash, I'll do one at the end. I always knew why people were canceling via survey. And then the A/B testing, the big dog, really the only way to measure this trade-off between delight and margin. And then the last thing I look for is, do you have a strategy? Do you have a set of theories and hypotheses that describe how you hope to delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? So for me, customer obsession is about putting the customer at the center of everything you do to delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways to invent a better future. The Netflix thing has worked out well. The learning company, Mattel, not so well. All right? So I think this customer obsession it can be incredibly helpful. And it's always good to have a bald billionaire say something to reinforce it. We've had 3 big ideas at Amazon that we've stuck with for 18 years. Put the customer first, invent, and be patient. The most important thing, focus obsessively on the customer. With that, I'd like to say thank you. So I'm at that very awkward moment. I'm sure many of you have seen a street performer. They do their thing. They put out the hat and everybody leaves. I am not putting out a hat for money. I am asking for feedback. I am obsessed, okay? This is the product. I would love, love, love it if you'd go to this little site. I'm not capturing emails. I'm not advertising. You can do it now, okay? And there's a little net promoter score right at the top of the page. 0 sucks, 10 is great, any number in between. I have gotten amazing help and feedback through this. I have 300 survey results now over the last 3 years. It's way cool, super helpful. All right, there's a copy of the presentation as well as an article I wrote on customer obsession, and I'm now happy to answer questions for you. Anybody got a question? Yes? You got a lot of theories and hypotheses, correct? So what we know is huge investment in original content. So this year, they green-lighted 1,000 TV and movie shows. Like, think about the history of the Earth and what TV stations have done. They took on $10 billion in debt. And it's really so they can keep fortifying that huge economy of scale. Today, Amazon is investing at about a third. Poor Hulu is like 20%. And so they're trying to build this hard-to-copy advantage in the economy of scale. Then you can speculate, like people, like, will they do live sports? I mean, I used to say never, and then they did something I said never about, okay? But what you do know is they're thinking long-term and strategically, and they just keep trying to make the service better for you. So you can think about, what do I want from Netflix? And those are the current experiments that they're engaged with today. Other questions? Hang on a second. Is there a mic? Yeah. I'm trying to be good. You're going to be next, way in the back row, okay? I can see you in the dark. Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
When you're doing an A/B test, how do you account for all of the variables that are outside of your control?
We're going to take another hour. It's hard. I was just thinking of one. We actually tried to understand the extent to that word of mouth factor was 2. And we did a regional test in Colorado. We did a level of advertising in this part of the state and none in the other. And we were trying to A/B test how much it would lift where friends would tell their friends. And it was a total wash. Like, it was totally preposterous to us that heavy investment in advertising hadn't changed anything. It turned out that frickin' Redbox put in like 1,000 of their automated DVD vending machines into the area where we had done all of our advertising. Okay? So all I'm doing is reinforcing how hard it is to do what we know is the right thing to do. It's hard. But I'm happy to answer the question at length later. Okay, I was way back. Just go ahead and yell. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the question is, what do you do when you're hearing radically different things? There's actually a really interesting Bezos quote that I don't fully understand. So my training was the final arbiter was what you had in A/B testing. And the unfortunate thing is many times you couldn't find a change. And so then you would inform your intuition that maybe we're on the right path because of qualitative survey and other sources. The conflicting thing that Bezos says is when he's presented with data that's different from anecdote, he goes with anecdote. And I don't fully understand his thinking. So, this is a brave new world of us inventing the future for our customers. There's nothing easy about it. But I've been puzzling over that. And if anybody's friends with him, I'd love to meet him. Yes?
Everyone is well versed in the importance of doing A/B testing, and you were fortunate enough to have a very large sample size of data to be able to run these tests. Unfortunately, the law of small numbers for a lot of the startups in the room might naively go and do A/B tests on very small samples and get very poor and misleading results. Some suggestions on how they can overcome those.
Yeah, so the question is, how the heck do you do consumer science when you're a punk startup, you don't have the A/B testing system, and you don't have the volume of users? So some of my hacks, like in working with startups, the first thing I look for is an NPS, which is really easy to execute. And if they have something north of 40, then I'm feeling okay. And if they're like at 6, like I joined my next startup because their NPS was already at 60. This was the textbook rental company that was inventing a better system for students who didn't want to spend $200 on a new textbook. So NPS is a good hack. I will talk to customers and try to form the theories and hypotheses. Cancel surveys have always been helpful to me. And then just frankly, having the existing data to begin to record what's going on from a business and a customer point of view, and to give those theories and hypotheses going forward. Really, I lean on the other sources of consumer insight until I have enough volume or the systems to do A/B testing. It's hard. I mean, I'm going to write an article someday on just exactly your question. I'm very empathetic, and I still enjoy working with punk startups. Yes?
2 quick questions. So the first one is, how do you see the impact of Amazon Prime videos on Netflix, given that the number of Prime Amazon is increasing?
What do you think the number is?
No idea.
Okay. So how should Netflix be thinking about Amazon, who's increasingly aggressive at doing original content and building a great internet streaming? And did I mention they're like massive and huge and just wonderful? So my guess is Amazon's investing at about 1/4 of the rate in originals that Netflix is. There's some other hard-to-copy advantages. The creative community, Hollywood, the storytellers. It used to be #1 was HBO by a mile. Now Netflix is #2, ahead of Amazon. I mean, Netflix will get the stories told more broadly, and they're totally hands-off from a creative point of view. It's just wonderful. And then this year they tied on the Emmys between HBO. It's just preposterous. But like I've competed with Amazon a lot. My sort of rule of thumb is you can compete with Amazon as long as what you're doing is not in their top 3. And I don't think that the movies are in their top 3 yet. And I wouldn't want to be doing cloud stuff against them.
Right.
Okay, you have it.
Second question is, as a product manager in the room,
This is like subliminal advertising. Okay? Yeah, I'm listening.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. Would it be, I know that you're going to be on the panel, Gib, later on this afternoon at 3:20, and I just don't want to limit the amount of time that you have to answer that question. So if you could wait till the panel, then that would be great. Is
I'm
that
happy
okay?
to answer
Okay,
questions.
wonderful.
Thanks a ton. Love it if you gave me feedback.